then that's when things usually don't work as well.
Yeah.
Like but
No, I agree with that, because it definitely, like, the security is definitely a whole lot different than somebody misplacing an item or whatever in a warehouse.
right.
So I think that is like a big part to consider. So yeah, I think that was some really good thoughts on it. Do you guys think that it was entirely Sanchez's fault, or do you think it was entirely his fault? And then why or why not with it?
I don't know if I could say it's 100% his fault. I do think that he became complacent, and wasn't really like on his toes, or like the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, and you just kind of get into this rhythm, and then your rhythm kind of slacks, and then things can happen. Things that you might have caught at the beginning, but now that you've worked there for so long, and you just kind of get complacent, and you just come into work and you do your work, and you don't really put like a 100% emphasis into it. You kind of start to slack, and then things can happen. So I do think a lot of it was his fault, but not entirely everything. I do think he became kind of what Kim was saying. You get complacent with where you're at, or you just kind of become stagnant. Even though the people that are flying or people coming in every day aren't the ones that are coming in every day. He's the one coming in every day.
Yeah.
It's to them, but it's old to him, and he just comes in and does the same thing every day. And I think he became kind of stagnant and kind of lackadaisical in his work in a sense, and like slacked off, and there was a security breach.
Yeah. No, that sounds super good. And like that ties in like the next question asked, in what ways did the TSA contribute to the breach? So I think it kind of comes back like maybe the TSA has a structural issue with the way that they have their job and their system set up, where it becomes super mundane for people, and it's easy for their employees to mess up mentally.
And a lot of employees are just there as a stepping stone. They're just like, yeah, I like working the X-ray machine, but the customers are all jerks and are super rude to me, so I'm getting out of here as soon as I can.
Right.
And that's another thing that in the case study, going off of that, is that it talked about how he always worked in the same workstation every day. And so I think that's another error on TSA's part. I think they could avoid the mundaneness, the lackadaisicalness of their workers if they rotated around. So sometimes they work the X-ray machine, or sometimes they work somewhere else. That way they're not like Sanchez was every day coming in and going to the same exact spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes being too familiar with something is our biggest enemy.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And like, oh, go ahead, Kim. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, back to your question about like what's kind of the overarching theme of all of these case studies and what to do. I think it's considering the people. It's, yes, the policies are in place, but the policies are to help the people. And so, it's a big, that's kind of the biggest thing to consider. And it's like, hey, if it's a good employee, a model employee, they just screwed up once, like, you have to take that into consideration. And I don't think, it's like, yeah, upper management might say make an example of him, fire him, but that's not considering the person. That's just basing everything off the policy. And so I think that's kind of one thing that they want us to consider and think about, the whole picture, not just the incident.
Yeah. And I think that style like that you're talking about is kind of, frankly, it's a little bit lazy, because like they don't want to restructure anything. Like, oh yeah, like the way we have things is fine. That person is at fault. And it's like, okay, yeah, he shouldn't have been on his phone probably at that point in time, but then you look at it like, okay, why is he on his phone? Like, does he not have time that he takes a break? Like,
right.
And that's, I think, the frustrating part about these cases is sometimes I don't feel like we're given enough information to really know some of these things. Like, they didn't really tell us what a lot of their policies are, and so sometimes I feel like I'm like, well, we don't really know exactly. Speculatively, we could say like, yeah, there's more that they could do to structure it, but it's hard to say like, who's really, what was really going on everything.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah. So like it wants us to talk about like what he could have done to make or what TSA could do to make the job more meaningful and stuff like that. And I think those are things we've kind of already talked about with like changing the structure, getting them to other places. The hard part is like where it comes in, I think, with the new employees that you guys like mentioned, that some of them, they don't care to be there. They're just, I'm here for a stepping stone or just to fill a gap in my time.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I think overall those employees are the hardest ones to motivate because they just genuinely don't care about the job.
Yep, that's true.
I don't know. You guys know, like, do you have any ideas on how to like motivate those kind of people?
I think that's it's hard because like it said in the case, it's an entry level job.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the people that you will get working there are last resort jobs, like people that can't find a job anywhere else. So that's their last resort. They know that they could probably get a job at TSA. Or like Kim was saying, it's a stepping stone to another job. And I guess with those people, you could have a little more pull on because, I mean, the next employer is going to ask for a recommendation, obviously, and they should know that. But as well, I mean, you could have influence on them and their next job at the next step. So I don't know where they would want to go after the TSA. Maybe they want to move up to the bomb dog or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can have a sit down talk with them and say, hey, you're not really performing like you want to move up, or you're not really performing like you want to get another job or a higher up job. You're not performing like you want to take the next step. And maybe that'll help motivate them to want to take that next step, because you as a supervisor are coming to them saying, hey, I don't see the performance necessary from you to get to the next level. But you could do that, like you can achieve that if you put in the effort and the motivation.
Yeah. I think having like just an honest discussion is like a great first place to start, like you said, and giving them that chance to kind of step it up and giving them the motive, like giving them the encouragement too, not saying like, hey, listen, like we're going to let you go if you don't start stepping it up, but say like, listen, this is like you're capable of it and we know you are, like that's why we hired you in the first place. But if you want to progress any further, I think it's good to have that positive role in there as well.
Right. And now, just kind of as we've talked about before, positive motivation is always more effective than negative motivation.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who you are, no matter what position you have, if you just come in and say you're doing this and wrong, do better, that's going to have the opposite effect. It's, hey, I really like how you do this. I really like how X, Y, and Z is happening. Like, we could improve in this area, and that's always the better way to handle it. And I think Derek had a good way of saying that, just like, hey, you have potential, like, let's get there, kind of thing. So
yeah, it's kind of like that whole thing, like if you ever made a mistake and your mom was just like, I'm disappointed in you, and that's all you got, that was way worse than getting chewed out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, ugh, that's the worst. So I think it's kind of a similar situation.
Right.
So it wants us to do like a role play with it, but it's only 2 people. So Kim, would you be all right being O'Reilly, and Derek, would you be all right being Sanchez?
Sure.
Sweet. So the situation that it basically paints is, so like we're right where the case study left off, where Sanchez is about to show up for work. It's basically like, so Kim, from O'Reilly's perspective, you'd be, as he's showing up for work, you're talking to him and letting him know what your decision is. And then just kind of like, you guys take your interactions from there, and just what you guys would feel would be like the best way to like move forward with it. So anyway, it's what you guys feel is best. There's really no right or wrong answer on this, but at the end of it, we'll just kind of talk about it for a second, look at a couple different things. We really don't have any other people to be observers, so I guess like I will be the observer and pay attention to things I notice. But yeah, if you guys need, we can take a minute or two to kind of like gather your thoughts, think about what you would say or do in that situation. But just let me know and we can dive right into it when you're ready.
All right.
You're good, Kim?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sweet. You good, Derek?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. All right. Hey, Sanchez, I just need to talk to you about the security breach and what happened the other day. Can you kind of tell me your side of the story and what happened?
Yeah. So, I started my shift at 3 o'clock in the morning that day, and I was finishing at 8. I had picked up a few extra shifts earlier this week. I was pretty much tired. I got a phone call, and I decided to take that phone call. It only lasted a couple minutes, but that couple minutes was, long enough for the breach to happen, for the guy to run by with the blue bag. So what it comes down to is pretty much I'd gotten distracted by a phone call, which shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, and that's when the security breach happened.
Okay, and who were you talking to? Like, was it an emergency phone call, or what made you feel like you needed to take that one?
I don't remember from the case study. Does it say in the case study who called?
It was his daughter.
It was his daughter? Okay.
Yeah.
So my 13-year-old daughter, Cherry, called me. She knew I was at work. I figured if she was calling during my work hours that it was probably important, and that I should take it. I probably should have let a supervisor know, or asked for somebody to cover that area at the time so I could go and take that phone call, but I took it on the spot.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining and being honest with me. I think you're a great employee. You're, one of the best we have. You understand the vision and, why TSA is so important. And, really, if it were up to me, I would just give you a verbal warning and say, don't do it again. That's really what I want to do. But kind of upper management is kind of, getting on me about this, because it did cause a big problem for a lot of airports and a lot of people, having to shut things down because of it. So, I think the best thing to do moving forward is to just kind of have you reassigned to the lower security level for a time, and then if there aren't any other incidences in the next 3 months or so, then we can kind of reevaluate then. Does that sound like that's going to work for you?
Yeah, it'll work. It's not obviously not what anybody wants to be demoted, but I do believe that I can show you that I am capable of doing that work. I do know protocol, and I do want the best for the airport and for the people traveling in it. So if that's what's necessary, then that's the next step we can take.
Yeah, and like I said, it's definitely temporary. It's just kind of until we can kind of put this behind us and they've kind of forgotten about it, which really I don't think will take very long. So.
All right. Sweet. Good job, guys. Fantastic.
I'm an actress, if you.
No. All plays are so awkward. But the things that I noticed, I think the most is I thought it was good, so definitely asking them all right, tell me, give me your side of the story, because then it definitely lets the person feel that and understand that you're kind of more open and understanding, rather than all right, listen, I've got a verdict for you, before they've had a chance to talk to you or anything like that, and shows them some respect because it's a person that you respect, at least before this. So that was one thing I noticed really well, or, that went really well coming from Riley's perspective. I think we all were kind of on the same page as far as like, that's kind of what we would have thought, like putting him on some kind of, like demotion or something like that, but allowing him to keep his job. So, it was pretty much in line with everything that we had talked about for appropriate action with them. I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts during the role play?
No, not really. I think Derek handled it well and owned up to it, and I think that's probably what Sanchez would have done too. Just reading from what about him, he would have just been like, "Yeah, sorry, I screwed up."
Yeah, the guy took his job seriously. That's for sure. So let's see. Ask the members on what their final decision would have been in this case. So it's pretty much like, would you fire Sanchez, put him on probation, give him paid leave, or just require him to receive additional training? We've talked about those.
Yeah.
We'd pretty much all either put him on like a probation or reassign him some training, like demotion, like something along those lines. I think a combination of the three works really well too. Let's see. Okay, so in the real life scenario, so Sanchez got a warning, but he wasn't fired. But 2 months later, he then caused another serious breach.
Dang it, Sanchez.
Right? So, like, kind of the final questions is like, what do you do now? And what does that teach us about discipline?
Well, I think it kind of teaches that it wasn't enough for him to take it seriously.
Yeah. I'm a believer that a warning kind of only goes so far.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like getting like, all right, I'm going to count to 3.
All right.
1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to do anything, so this is totally ineffective.
Yeah. I mean, like, it would be super hard to say for me necessarily, and I get it, it's like a really hard decision to make. But if he like turned around and just shortly thereafter, 2 months later, he caused another serious breach, I think at that point, it is like, hey, we were trying to let you kind of redeem yourself a little. Like, we wanted to give you a shot because we knew you were capable of this, but we can't be having serious breaches. I think after his second one, that close to each other, I think at that point it's time to let him go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I agree with that because, especially with airport security, it's not just like, yeah, you screwed up. It's like, no, you, like, hundreds of people traveling, screws up their plans, screws up their, flights and all of this stuff. Like, it's not just like, yeah, you didn't do it and 12 people are affected. It's a big problem. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you have to fire him after the second one, especially 2 months later.
Yeah.
The first one, you gave him more than a warning, but you gave him less than firing him. You kind of found like somewhere in the middle by demoting him. And if you had to talk with him, saying that, if he showed himself worthy, he could potentially get back up. And then he just turned around and causes and let another breach by. I think at that point in time, you just have to let him go.
Yeah.
Find somebody else, because 2 months apart. The first one might have been a fluke, but then to have another one happen 2 months apart kind of says that the first one really wasn't a fluke.
Yeah. No, I'd agree, because at that point in time, it's kind of like, okay, well, that means that there's an underlying, like, something's happening that it might not be causing a problem every single time, but it's happening enough that we're finding problems.
Yep.
Yeah, that, I don't know, that would really suck. That would suck being O'Reilly, because you're like,
Yeah.
I was really trying to give you a chance. Like, other people wanted you fired. I stuck, because at that point it's like I stuck my neck out for you a little bit in saying like, no, I'm going to keep this, we're going to keep him around. We'll give him a chance. We'll just warn him. And then you're like, wow, I got burned.
Yeah. Yeah. People make their own choices.
They do.
Not always smart ones.
Hmm. So I think that's the hard part of that discipline is like we can do things to put ourselves like in the best position and give people the best opportunity. But like Ken said, like people will make their choices. Like there's no surefire disciplinary way to make sure that everybody turns out to be a stellar employee. We can give people chances, try to teach them, help them along, but sometimes people are just not going to do it.
Yeah, and I think another hard part about that is, I mean, you have to be the bad guy at some point in time. I mean, you tried to be the good guy by letting him keep his job and just demoting him, but then he messed up again, and so you eventually have to be the bad guy. And I feel like that's probably one of the hardest parts of O'Reilly's job is having to be the bad guy. And probably, I'm sure Sanchez isn't the only one that he's had to fire. But I mean, I'm sure every time it's hard to fire somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Totally agree. That'd be a crappy situation. And I guess that's the hard part about management. And if we ever work our way up in any management positions, we're gonna have to deal with that at some point.
That's true.
So, all right. Well, that's pretty much the end of our discussion. As far as that's laid out, but I think it was a good discussion. I don't know if you guys have, had anything else that you wanted to share or say, and I've kind of covered any of my thoughts.
Let's see. Next week is the 4th, so we probably don't want to meet on Monday, right?
Preferably not. So next week I can meet on kind of any day, actually.
Okay. Do you want to maybe do? I know it's kind of soon, but maybe like Monday or Wednesday. Wednesday would have to be a little later because I work. A little later. Actually, Monday would probably be best for me because we have a family reunion, so I have family coming into town.
Okay.
But I know that's like way soon, but.
I mean, it's just a little bit of reading is all. I
feel like, and it's, we probably all want to get stuff done earlier in the week.
Yeah. Well, I've got 16 hours in a car this weekend, so I'll have time to read.
Okay. Yay.
Right on. I'm driving, so I don't have time to read, but I'll get it done. If we want to do it Wednesday or Monday, I'll get it done by then.
All right. Yeah.
That's it. Monday. I'm free after 5:36, so.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm good with. Why don't we shoot for 6 o'clock? That would be a good time for me.
Okay.
So.
Hopefully, I can do 6:30 might be, or 6:15. Let's say 6:15.
Okay.
Because I have. Just depends on work. Sometimes I can be out right at 5. Sometimes it's closer to 5:30. So.
Okay. Who's the group leader for next week?
Yeah. So let's do it. Let's see. I think it's Derek. Yeah.
All right. Sweet. Okay.
All right.
We'll see ya.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
All right. We'll see ya.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.